During the Renaissance in Europe, as artists and intellectuals were exploring bold new forms of expression, Africans and their descendants were captured, enslaved, and traded from the Old to the New World. But often forgotten is that a population of African people lived in Europe as well. Many were brought as servants or slaves, but some were free, as slavery was not a lifetime sentence. Some were even travelers themselves. Importantly, a few were recorded by the best artists of the period, their faces and expressions preserved in paint and stone. In the Princeton University Art Museum, a collection of these works is being presented together.
We are throwing light on a small population in Renaissance Europe, people of African ancestry, and really highlighting the extraordinary range of their contributions to society at that time.
The Renaissance was an era of change, with movement to and from the European continent aided by better sea routes and faster ships. But this exchange went both ways. Ethiopian scholars and pilgrims arrived in Rome in the late 1400s, and in 1484, a royal Congolese embassy came to Lisbon.
But what we discover is that many of them also came as scholars, as visitors, as merchants, and as diplomats.
Begun at the Walters Museum of Art in Baltimore, revealing the African presence in Renaissance Europe, showcases works that examine this diversity.
The fact that famous artists such as Veronese or Bronzino or Rubens, for example, would choose to depict these subjects lends dignity to the subject. This is an important subject.
The show opens with an image of the three kings. Coming from afar with exotic gifts, they represent a new world sewn together by faith. Beginning in the Renaissance, a black king appears. This image comes from the workshop of Gerard David, and its subjects are painted from life, in the artist's studio in Antwerp. Though the sitter's identity here remains unknown, his presence raises important questions.
The premise of this show would be then, okay, so who is he? Was he enslaved? Was he freed? Will he be freed? So to take this painting not as the conclusion of the story, but as the beginning.
And art can sometimes show aspects of historical figures that may have been purposefully left unwritten. Alessandro de' Medici was Duke of Florence, assassinated in 1537. According to rumors of the time, he was the son of Clement VII, a cardinal who would become pope, and a presumably forced liaison with a black African slave of the Medici household. Portraits done of him during his life obscure his hair and lighten his features. The small portrait in the show, painted after his death by Bronzino, shows him as he was.
And here, because Alessandro is now dead, the artists, just like contemporary historians, feel that they can simply describe him as he was.
A portrait of Alessandro de' Medici's illegitimate daughter Giulia by Jacopo di Pontormo hangs nearby. One image showcases the day-to-day presence of African people in the landscape of Renaissance Europe more than any other. The view of Lisbon by an unknown Flemish artist shows a panorama of Portuguese life not dissimilar from a busy street scene photographed today.
Lisbon had the largest population of people of African ancestry in Europe. Over 10% of the population was black, but we also know, according to the estimates of historians, that probably 2% of the total population were free blacks. So this is a very significant and growing community. It's right on the edge between a black neighborhood and the Jewish neighborhood. You see some people who are clearly enslaved. There's one person actually in manacles. There are some people who are, selling things. They're doing all kinds of sort of activities. Some of the people there clearly are sailors, including black sailors. They must be on shore leave. A black man is playing what I think is a mandolin, and a white woman has just, with her jug of water, has just stopped for a moment just to listen, for example. The passage that is the most striking is a man on horseback in the front, a black man on horseback. This is one of the black nobles. How extraordinary.
Life was not easy for people of African descent in Europe during the 16th century. The wounds of slavery and servitude show through the record. But often, this is the only impression of the time. Revealing the African presence in the European Renaissance shows that another identity, that of the Black European, can also be seen if we look closely.
The show ends with the figure of Benedict the Moor, who was a 16th century Franciscan, Black, born of slave parents, who lived in Sicily. Here, this riveting face that confronts you right at the end of the show reminds us that it's an ongoing story. By this point, we can maybe call him, instead of an African, can call him a Black European. This is the Black European of the Renaissance who has the greatest impact today.
The Economist.